Hello friends, Nayaswami Hriman here, and I am going to share with you from the original writings of Paramhansa Yogananda on an article he wrote on how to acquire initiative. Now, you might fairly ask, why would he write on that, and why would I speak on that article? What does that have to do with self-realization, with meditation, with spiritual growth? Well, you can go back to the beginning, Genesis, in fact, because the very nature of this universe is the fact that it was created, and it is therefore ever evolving and therefore ever creative. Now, in traditional religious circles and terminology, creativity is shunned and frowned upon in many circles. You just, in olden times, were supposed to do what you were told, whether you were a church member or a monastic, a monk, or a nun. Obedience to the hierarchy in which you lived in feudal times was sufficient so far as you were concerned. We live in a very different age, and we admire those people who start up new ventures and are successful at them. Now you could say, well, our admiration is more on the order of envy and the desire to be wealthy like perhaps some of them become. And that's certainly a fair accusation, if you will, spiritually speaking. But there's more to it than that. And that ability to be open and creative, to be creative, is based on the ability to be open and courageous about attuning ourselves to the divine will. Because just to become famous or rich and through your creativity is obviously not by and of itself a spiritual principle. But certainly people of genius and creativity are obviously people of energy, which if they turn that energy towards God, towards self-realization, they will go much further than the 1 horsepower type individual who meekly says their prayers and helps little old ladies across the street, as the saying goes. And so that's where the power of initiative and creativity fits into the spiritual path, because it takes courage and to turn one's back on the mores of society at large, which are naturally materialistic and ego-affirming, and to follow the narrow path, if you will, to self-realization. But where then does creativity come into it? Well, on the deeper teachings, in the deeper teachings of yoga, and in the description by great saints everywhere, but for which India has specialized in the detailed account of the unfoldment of higher consciousness, which is universal. I mean, Christian mystics and all other mystics had such powers over nature as levitation, bilocation, psychic abilities, and remote viewing, and all those kinds of things. The ability to change the weather, the ability to heal people, to raise the dead, even. All those things have existed everywhere, but in India they have been chronicled in more minute ways. And the raising of what's called the Kundalini Energy, the raising of our consciousness, in other words, goes through specific pathways and has specific manifestations. Now, I'm not here to get into that because I want to focus on Yogananda's article on initiative. But the fact is as we grow in realization, we grow in awareness. They are one and the same. And that awareness brings to us inspiration. The level of spiritual awakening and consciousness is by its very nature creative, because that's the creative power that has manifested this world. And so you find when you study the lives of great saints, you find in the context of their lives and their own particular path to God, you will find them to be both powerful, courageous, and in many respects, if you read carefully, very creative in the institutions perhaps that they founded, and think of St. Francis and the rule that he gave. St. Francis is said to have been the precursor to moving from Latin as the official language to using the vernacular. In his case, it was the form of Italian, if you will, at the time. He is said to be a precursor even to the Renaissance in his acceptance and interest in nature, in God appearing in nature, and on and on. Creativity is a hallmark of spirituality, especially in this age, even if it isn't so as notably in prior age from which we have come. We see this in the life of Paramhansa Yogananda, just the courage that it took to come to the West and the creativity to embark on all sorts of new patterns of spiritual teaching. When he did his mail order lessons, for example, a precursor to, you might say, the internet and so forth, that was considered rather scandalous, really, from the great tradition of India of guru-disciple, individual teaching, one-on-one, to print his lessons all the way through the higher initiations of the Kriya technique in printed form. And so in many ways he showed his own creativity. But I want to move now just briefly to this wonderful article, How to Acquire Initiative. First, he starts off by describing most people of being 1 horsepower. Now, horsepower was something that was very apropos to his particular generation, moving as it did from the power of horses into automobiles and factories and so forth in the latter part of the 19th century, early 20th century. But most people are of 1 horsepower, and that reflects itself in their lack of interest in spiritual seeking, but at the same time in their lack of even being particularly evil, Some people just don't have enough energy to be bad. They just conform themselves to the religion they're born into, conform themselves to their family patterns and the family business and all that kind of thing. That's 1 horsepower. He describes initiative rather, as having 3 stages. The initiative in small matters, the initiative and inventiveness that improves things, makes them better, let's say, whether that's in terms of engineering or whether that's in how you work with your home or your business or even how you wear your clothes and your hair and all sorts of things. So it's a kind of a marginal micro level of initiative that you take, and it's more personal. The middle range of initiative is just simply, in his description, more visible, okay? Not bordering on, but not achieving the sort of greatness that we think of in initiative of the great titans of industry of his time, the Edisons and the Fords and people of that nature. Nowadays we have our Facebook people and our Amazon founders and all those kinds of people. But he says initiative means the power of creation. And he links the ability to laugh with having initiative. I'm no psychologist, but he goes on to describe humankind's ability to laugh as something that animals don't have. Well, he didn't put it that bluntly, and I don't think it's black and white. I think animals do laugh, and they laugh at us. But anyway, that ability to see the oddness, the bizarreness of a given situation is sort of opens the door to intuition and initiative. The ability to see in that which others take as ordinary an opportunity. But I thought that was quite interesting to connect laughing with initiative. Let's see. Ask yourself this question, he writes. Have I ever done anything new in life? Have I ever done something new which nobody else ever did? That is the starting point of your initiative. You must know that before you can start at all. Some people think they have absolutely no power to act differently. They're like sleepwalkers, he goes on to say. And so he says if you feel you have not shown initiative in your life, he says start with small things. Make things in your life around you better. Look for ways to improve, not just yourself in terms of your habits and virtues, which of course we all should be doing, but also in making your home neater, making your home more graciously arranged for guests. I mean, I'm just thinking of some obvious things because I'm here at home. But making what you have and what you do, the world and the life around you, making it better. That's the best place to start. He goes on to say, remember this. If you have that faith within you, and if there is something you desire which is not in the universe, it shall be created for you. Do you remember Jesus saying, if you have faith and you want to move a mountain, then you should be able to move a mountain? That's really what they're talking about. The power that created this universe, when we are aligned to God's power, we inherit those powers, that ability. And we should affirm that by courageously trying new things in our lives appropriate to our lives. Let's see. Okay. Yes, here we go. Those who enjoy giving strength, courage, music, they are great. So he also links then initiative with self-giving, with helping other people. And that's because it's obvious. In other words, if you don't necessarily have a creative, inventive mind from a engineering or technical standpoint, you can certainly look around the world, your world, and see that people in your family or in your neighborhood and so on need some kind of help. And so, how can I help? I remember Swami Kriyananda talking about his first day meeting Paramhansa Yogananda, when at least 2 or 3 people, ending with Yogananda himself, opened the conversation upon meeting him being Swami Kriyananda as a young man, with, how may I help you? At the same time as I remember a tongue-in-cheek joke that Padma's father had in his business office that said something like this: how may we help you out? Which way did you come in? Okay, so trying to be funny there, right? Laughter. All right. So with unflinching steadiness, march on your path, believing that the infinite creative power is behind you. What he's saying is that creativity, especially the creativity to do great things, only comes to the extent we are linked with the greater power of the infinite power of spirit. He said, people live in dead quotations, go on collecting ideas of others without showing themselves. I made up my mind. I think he was talking about when he embarked on his life of lecturing, sharing the teachings. He said, I made up my mind I would not lecture by learning, but by inspiration, believing that the infinite creative power was behind my speech. In this respect, Swami Kriyananda showed, as Yogananda obviously did, that he, Swami Kriyananda, would say, I don't prepare my lectures. He said, I prepare myself. And he would enjoy telling the story in his early monkhood when he experimented in front of an audience of 100 people, going silent, expecting God to speak through him. Everyone was sweating bullets, as they say. He wasn't at all nervous. He had heard that you're supposed to let God speak through you, so he said, okay, go for it, old buddy. and nothing happened. And of course, I don't know why he did that, but he was a courageous young man to stand in front of people and do that. But I'm sure he knew, actually, but so I don't know why he did that, really. But he showed in his life that ability. Only once or twice do I remember Swami Kriyananda writing out some notes for important talks that he was giving. And the one I remember were notes when he was talking about the yogic path, the chakras, for those of us who know that. And he had to give a week-long series, which became quite well known and are recorded and available for people. But normally he spoke from inspiration, and most of us who were trained by him, he didn't impose that on us. He didn't expect that we should do that, because not everybody has that ability. But those of us who tried to learn from Swami, we generally speak in that way. I have used notes sometimes, but mostly in my inspirational talks, I don't. I think it's worked okay. Okay. The other thing that all great inventive, creative people do in all walks of life, material or spiritual, is to remind us not to be discouraged. That's where courage comes in, because Edison and his many failures, we all know those stories. And how do you get experience? By failing. And so, and the tests that come to you and the obstacles that obstruct your ability, your efforts to be creative and take initiative, are tests that are there to strengthen you. So it's not easy. I know that most people are, in fact, well, I don't want to say 1 horsepower, but let's face it, there can only be a certain percentage of great people. But everyone can be successful, and each one of us as devotees can serve. And what is initiative if not asking, what is thy will? And then performing that will, even against our own inclinations. You know, like if you don't like somebody, to be loving toward them. Just to give an obvious example, someone has hurt you, but yet you can retain your respect for them and hopefully your expression of love for them and concern, etc. So really, when you boil this thing down, initiative, what it's really talking about is attuning ourselves to the divine will, and then manifesting that will with courage and creativity. All right, well, I've probably gone into overtime. I seem to like to do that. And I'm going to sign off now, and we'll see you soon. Blessings to all.